Thanks for listening to WJ Talk, the Waterways Journal place for conversations that move the marine and waterways industry forward. You'll hear from the Waterways Journal editor, Frank McCormick, and thought leaders within the industry discussing topics that inform, educate, and connect the commercial marine community. Today's episode is sponsored by OpenTug. OpenTug is a technology company purpose-built for inland and coastal barge logistics. Its flagship program, Barge OS, enables end-to-end voyage management, bringing visibility, predictability, and financial control to every stage of the barge lifecycle. Once again, thanks for listening.
Okay, this is another edition of WJ Talk. My name's Frank McCormick. I'm the editor of the Waterways Journal, and I'm talking today with Neil Maunu. You're the executive director of the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association. I'm super thankful for the time. Yeah, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Frank. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned to you already, I'm the Alabama guy that's lived in Louisiana for forever and have only been out to the West Coast a couple times. So I'm come to this conversation excited to learn new things and hear about how your association works and how the system out there works. So I just wanted to sort of start off with asking you to tell a little bit about the PNWA. What does your membership look like? What are they involved with? What are some of the industries and commodities that they move? And yeah, for viewers and listeners, take a chance to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Frank. Oh, you mean give our sales pitch, give our value add. Yeah, always happy to do that. The best way actually is for you to come on out. We'll take anybody from Alabama or Louisiana. You can come on out anytime and we'll show you around the river system. Yeah, so I've been here almost 3 years now, and it's a great association. We have over 150 members. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan industry trade association that does federal advocacy. So we do the vast majority of our work with our members and with our partners here in the region back in Washington, D.C. We're regionally based, regionally focused. So Oregon, Washington, Idaho. And one of the great things about our membership is just the huge diversity that we have amongst our members. So we're public ports, tug and barge operators, terminal operators, union labor, other associations. We have some consulting groups that are members, mostly on the environmental side and the law side. So it's this great, conglomeration of maritime industry folks that get together and support each other and network and work on, the issues that are important to our river system, to our coastal ports, and to our members. And I always tell people people say, I don't know if I'd be a good fit to be a member of your association, PNWA. What's a good explanation? And I just tell people, if you touch a federal waterway, a federal navigation channel in some manner, or piece of federal infrastructure that's in and on the water, you'd be a great fit for us, because that's what we advocate for. It's not super exciting stuff to talk about pile dikes and jetties and dredging, but it's so important to what we do, and that's the message that we want to continue to spread.
Cool. And can you go a little bit into detail about some of the things that are different between what say a vessel and a barge would look like on the Columbia Snake River system versus the Western rivers? And I've chuckled at that because the Western rivers aren't in the West, but your rivers are, though. So tell us a little bit about that.
We should do a whole podcast, a whole interview on the geography of Western, what is a Western river and what is the Midwest. Yeah, and we chuckle about it too, because people say, we're at Western rivers, and people out here where it's really the West. And I was a geography major in college, so that's an extra chuckle. I mean, I barely passed, so at least I know where we're at out here. So one thing too is, I talked about the diversity of our membership, the diversity in cargo and the diversity in different kinds of operations that happen in the region. And then I'll kind of get a little specific on the Columbia Snake River system. I mean, we have tiny coastal ports that are just primarily doing fishing. So we'll have small ports that do fishing. We'll have large container ports that are members, like Northwest Seaport Alliance in Seattle and Tacoma. And then, as you mentioned, we have the river system operations. So some of the commodities we're moving on the river system are grain, wheat primarily. We'll move renewable fuels and fuels. We'll move wood chips, wood products. Tons of different cargo, just like the other river. We call it the other river systems, the Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, and those systems. That's the other river system. We work pretty closely with other regional industry groups and associations. So one of them is the Upper Mississippi Waterways Association, and we've kind of spawned this partnership over the last couple of years with some of our mutual members in agriculture. And it's been great because we've got this partnership where we're learning and we send a delegation to travel that river system. They sent a delegation out here last summer. So we're able to share ideas and crosstalk similarities and differences. To your point, what are the unique aspects of our system? I like to tell people we're a high lift system. So on our federal navigation channel going all the way to the seaport of Lewiston, Idaho. Yes, Idaho has a seaport, Frank. You've probably heard me use that line before at some of those other events. It's 465 miles inland, and that inland channel is a 14-foot deep draft channel. The lower, we call it the lower Columbia River channel, that's from like Portland, about 110 miles to the Pacific Ocean. That's maintained to 43 feet deep. So those ocean going vessels are coming in all the way, through ports like ports of Longview, Kalama, Vancouver up to Portland, and then the inland system goes up to Idaho. And it's a unique system because our navigation locks on those 8 navigation locks and dams that get you up to Lewiston, Idaho, they're between 100 and 110 foot lift on average. So we have one of the highest lifts in a single navigation lock at the John Day Dam on the Columbia River. That's taking barge traffic literally up 110 feet to that next pool to transit upriver or downriver as it goes. So it's just one of the intricacies about our system, and I love it when folks from Mississippi and other river systems come out and they're just like their eyes just get huge when they see these projects.
No, I can imagine. And I've seen like some of the barges that just look different even from like a covered hopper barge that I'm familiar with. Is that because you've got 14 foot of draft on the upper end and they can just move more?
It's both. I mean, primarily yes. And so our lock systems dimensions are 86 feet wide by 675 feet long. All 8 projects are the same. So our grain barges are designed specifically to fit in 4 barge tows, and they're on average about 3,500 tons per barge. So we can get almost 14,000 tons in a tow, but our barges are specifically made for this system. So they're loaded, they're covered hopper barges. They're loaded through the top along the center line, and they're unloaded. We have 6 export elevators on the lower Columbia River between Portland and Longview that are unloading those barges, and they just put that grain leg in the center of that barge, and you plug the barge in, and you've got augers that are augering the commodity to the center, and that grain leg pulls it out and empties the barge. So it's a closed system. It's a unique system that's special to where we're at here. And our tug and barge operators are again specifically built for here on the river system.
Okay. I've been at some meetings where you were making a presentation and you're given sort of a legislative or regulatory update. Would you take a second to do that? I was going to ask specifically about those locks and dams on the river system and then dredging on the system. So could you speak to both of those issues?
Sure. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Frank, I should have said from the top, we're a small staff. I got 2 government relations folks on our team, and we cover it, as you can imagine, out here on the West Coast, just a huge, broad area of regulatory and rulemakings with NOAA, National Marine Fisheries, and also our partnership with the Corps of Engineers, which is really where I don't want to say where we make our money because we don't make money. Our goal is
Right.
to help get appropriations and funding to the Corps of Engineers to do the projects that they need to keep this system well maintained and educate people, lawmakers in DC and the general public. And to your point, you just mentioned 2 big things that could be presentations in and of themselves. I'll take the dredging the lower Columbia River question first. Lower Columbia River is, like I mentioned, a 43-foot deep channel. It was deepened to that in 2010 after a decades long project to deepen the channel from 40 feet to 43 feet. Part of that, and not to get into a bunch of the details, is like many projects nationwide, there are sponsors, and we have 4 sponsor ports that are sort of the bigger ports along the lower Columbia River, and they work hand in hand with the Portland District of the Corps to manage that dredging project, right? So the Corps is responsible for the O&M, operations and maintenance. Those sponsors, I'm really oversimplifying this, are responsible for the placement of that dredge material, whether it's in water, whether it's upland. it's time this year for the Corps to do their 20-year dredge management plan update, their DMMP. And so they've been working through that for the last couple of years with sponsors, stakeholders, and folks like us at PNWA. They're getting close to finalizing that and pushing that out there. It's been a unique, and it's not been our challenge. It's probably been the Corps and the sponsor ports since before I got here. But one of the challenges that we have is running out of places to productively put this material. And so the Corps' solution, one of their solutions going forward, is to place the material in water and build sort of these pile dike confined aquatic structures in water and keep the material there, which is great for the river, health of the river. It's great for habitat and salmon and steelhead. We have world-class runs on the river system here. And so it's a great solution. The challenge is it costs money. And so one of the things that PNWA has been advocating for and working through in this year's Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA cycle, is how is that cost share structured and organized? And so that's something really where our members and PNWA are saying, listen, this is solving an operations and maintenance issue for the Corps, and it's the cheapest, most environmentally friendly solution. Let's have this fully funded, fully federally funded. And so that's just one example of what PNWA is doing and what the Corps is doing to really look out 20 years to keep this channel maintained. And it's, we're not the deepest channel to get products to export in the nation, but it's a vital artery here where we work hand in hand, even with folks in the Midwest and the other river system. They rely on our system here to do the exports. For example, we're the number one export gateway in the United States for wheat. And so farmers in the Midwest rely on this system. 30 or so million tons of grain exports from the Columbia River every year. So it's not a small piece.
And is that cost share? I feel like that sounds a little different than a lot of other channel maintenance business lines work. Is that correct?
Yes, right. So the cost share, is a Corps of Engineers policy based on the depth of the channel. It's a 25% cost share for construction, and that's what the Corps' policy is.
Okay.
We view, like what the pile dike work and the jetty work, that's all for managing sediment in the river system. That's operations and maintenance and fully federally funded. And we view this as a similar solution.
Okay. So they're considering this a new construction
They are.
project.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
got you.
Can I touch on
then,
Snake River dams?
yeah,
Or
please
were
do.
you going somewhere else? Sorry.
No, that's what I was going
Okay.
to ask about next.
Just because you mentioned it previously, so on our system, there's 4 locks and dams on the Columbia River, and then there's 4 on the lower Snake River, right, where the Snake River comes into the Columbia up to Idaho. And for the last 25 plus years, there's been ongoing litigation over those 4 dams, and environmental groups and some treaty tribes and even the states of Oregon and Washington have sued the federal government, saying that those dams should be removed for salmon and steelhead populations. Again, you can imagine the amount of litigation and back and forth over the last 25 years. The most recent litigation was a lawsuit filed in 2020 over the federal government's biological opinion and final record of decision on an EIS around those 4 dams. And the question sort of is an Endangered Species Act question on, do these 4 dams cause jeopardy, which is the term in the ESA, Endangered Species Act, to these species? And after $54 million in 4 years and all the agencies involved, the government said, no, it's determined they do not cause jeopardy. And that's what was sued by those plaintiffs that I mentioned. So the last, now it's been almost 5 or 6 years since that's happened. Time flies. Consisted of a federal mediation process that had some good aspects and a lot of bad aspects, resulting in a stay in litigation and a path that we viewed and our stakeholders and river users viewed as a path toward dam breaching. So it was not a good solution. This just recently, within the last year, the administration has taken a position saying, no, we are not acceptable with moving forward with this stay in litigation. And that brought us all back to the courtroom. So for the last probably 4 or 5 months, from October when the plaintiffs filed a new filing through last month, been kind of back in court, and actually we're back in front of the judge in Oregon District Court back in February, and he ruled on the plaintiff's request for a preliminary injunction. They basically said, the plaintiff said, hey, the stay went away. This is so urgent right now. We need to fix this solution now. And the plaintiffs asked for lower pool levels and more spill in the system, which from navigation standpoint compromises the safety of what we do on this river system and the reliability. And it sets a path to have a federal judge telling industry and river experts and the core experts how to operate this system is just not acceptable. So he did order some changes to the system, and PNWA and our members like Foss and Tidewater and Shaver and others on the system are actively, our cruise line members here are actively working to make sure that we're getting safe navigation. Luckily, we've got a great partnership with the Corps of Engineers, and so they're able to fulfill their congressional mandate to ensure we have that safe system. But again, it just sets a really poor precedent. The case in general will continue through this year on its merits. So what I always tell folks, like, yes, this is a regional issue. This issue is here right now. Endangered species issues are everywhere throughout the country. There are a lot of environmental groups that are not going to be satisfied in just breaching or taking out or removing. That's what breaching is. These navigation locks and dams, they're not stopping here. This is a litmus test for the rest of the country. And so just getting everyone's awareness and understanding and telling the facts on what this system provides. It's navigation, renewable power generation, irrigation for tens of thousands of acres of crops, recreation. It's all these things. And the facts are that the salmon and steelhead numbers in general have been increasing. And it was not the dams that caused that initially. So there's a lot of debate on that. And I said a lot there, Frank, but hopefully that gives folks an understanding on why it's important, why folks should should learn more and educate themselves. And it's far from over.
Mm-hmm. Is there good alignment among the diverse stakeholders in the waterway?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, there is. Even our inland system, like I mentioned before, we have coastal port members and lower river port members. The great thing about our region and our industry here is folks understand that, okay, just because I don't have a direct correlation to Pasco, Washington, or Lewiston, it's a living, breathing system that works together. What happens on the upper portion of our system affects the lower portion, and we're stronger together because of that. So this gets painted as a political issue, of sorts. At the end of the day, we've found that Pacific Northwest delegation back in DC, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, sure, that they may not all speak out in support of or an opposition to those that want to breach the dams, but they do support industry and commerce and navigation on the system. So it's a tenuous situation, but again, our role is educating and continuing to advocate. We're seeing good support.
I wanted to ask about the effects of, I guess, politics and tariffs and wars and oil prices and stuff like that, because I know that, I mean, it always surprises me anew of how interconnected things are and just how, different things affect things that I would have never guessed. And so I wanted to give you a chance to sort of answer, have you seen some shifts based on, I guess, world events?
Yes, it's funny. I mentioned to our comms manager in the office, I said, yeah, here's the questions. I'm excited to talk with Frank. And she goes, don't say anything about Iran. Okay, I won't. I wouldn't anyway. But there's a side note there. I actually served in Iraq for 2 years when I was in the military. So that's maybe another story for another time or later. But it's funny that you mentioned that question, because we were up in Everett, the port of Everett, yesterday, and I've driven by there many times over the past few years, and they do a lot of containerized project cargo. And we're seeing it was empty. The yard was empty, Frank. And Seattle and Tacoma numbers are down, just containers. Portland's, has challenges. Talking with the Port of Everett folks, there's a ton of uncertainty, and there has been over the last year on impacts from tariffs, impacts from USTR Section 301 fees, which are impacting Chinese owned and operated vessels. There's not a lot of certainty. And our coastal ports, And again, these are the ones I mentioned are a lot of import, are seeing some dramatic effects. That's one aspect. The other is, I, we can't get away from fuel prices. Washington State is number two highest gas and diesel prices in the nation right now, and is consistently up there. It's impacting our communities, our economies, and it impacts our folks driving tugboats up and down the river, and our farmers who are trying to put crops in the ground. I mentioned wheat. We export 6 to 8 million tons of wheat, soft white wheat that's grown in eastern Washington, Oregon, and Idaho every year. And the margins on that soft white wheat per bushel are so slim and a lot of times underwater. And so our industry and our farmers are trying to compete globally with Ukraine, with Australia on that soft white wheat market. And, you know, we're moving it the most efficient way that we can, barge to vessel. A lot moves in train and on rail to vessel, tiny bit in trucks. And when those input costs go up, that those margins just go away. And it's inputs on diesel fuel, it's inputs on fertilizers, and it's our agriculture community that's a huge part of what we're doing here in our region and in our maritime industry. They're really feeling the negative effects right now.
I feel like we talk a lot about a reliable system, and there's a lot of focus on timely dredging and lock and dam maintenance, and making it to where it's dependable and there's no doubt that it's not going to be available when a barge needs to come through. But there's all these other inputs and effects that can really mess with the not the waterway system, but just the logistics system as a whole.
Yeah, no, certainly. It's just when you think you've got an understanding on the inputs and what's affecting things, something else pops up over here. We struggled,
Mm.
some of our members upriver, up in that farthest pool behind the eighth navigation lock that's up in Lewiston, Idaho. There was not a lot of water coming down this year, and there was sedimentation and silting, and so we're struggling with loading to just getting cargo onto barges. Worked through that, and we got a solution with the Corps. Okay, great. We put a band-aid and fix this one issue. And then you turn around and you see, that diesel prices are through the roof for something that's outside the control of the farmer that's just trying to put seeds in the ground. It's challenging. So we do what we can do at our role here at PNWA to help them and to advocate for them. We're going back to DC for our annual, we call it Mission to Washington, here April 20th, and we go back and we have a full day Capitol Hill, like a lot of industry groups do. We actually sit in one room with our members. We bring about 80 folks back, and our members of Congress and the delegation come to us for a day on the House side and a day on the Senate side. It's a really good opportunity for our members of Congress to hear from PNWA's members. These are the real-time impacts that we're having because of what's going on globally right now, good or bad.
And what's the best way for people to get involved with that?
So www.pnwa.net, we have a ton of fact sheets. So I mentioned education a
Okay.
few times. Just being educated on the facts and what our priorities are for our projects and our policies here at PNWA is huge. We're doing a great job now on our social media, so encourage folks to follow us on LinkedIn and others. The biggest thing that's regionally focused is the involvement that our membership have in tracking Lower Snake River Dam and staying on top of all that. So we partner really closely. American Waterway Operators partners with us, American Association of Port Authorities.
Mhm.
To somebody that's not a member or doesn't know about those associations, one of the best ways recently to learn about our system and what we do here, there's a couple, if you search up Columbia Snake River System on YouTube, there's a couple folks that are putting out some really good content right now. One's called The Armchair Engineer, and he's got a bunch of views, and it's simple, but it's real facts, and it's really educating around the benefits of this system. So things like that. And anytime folks can reach out to me or our group on specific questions, or just, hey, how can I get involved? I'm going back to DC, talking to my member of Congress from Kansas. What should I tell her or him that we need? And that's another area where we've been branching out from the PNW, is making partnerships with key members of Congress that have similar issues just in other parts of the country.
I was curious to hear a little bit more about your background. You mentioned that you've been there, I can't remember if it was almost 3 or a little over 3, but how did you get to where you are? Just tell me a little bit about Neil prior to
Sure.
PNWA?
It all started as a geography major. No, I'm just kidding. I commissioned into the United States Army as an aviation officer back in 2000, and I served just over 7 years on active duty. I did a couple deployments overseas, flew Black Hawk helicopters, and did an assortment of different jobs over in Iraq and all over. I spent some time in Alabama and Texas, and I'm from Portland, Oregon, and so part of our goal was my wife and I was, hey, if we're ever not happy with the military, let's just not stay. Of course, you have to do your commitment. So after my commitment was up and bouncing between, training centers in the desert in Southern California to Iraq and the desert over there, we wanted to have a family. So moved back and used a headhunting firm and started at a company called Kinder Morgan Bulk Terminals, and got familiar with the waterfront and eventually ran operations for 4 marine terminals doing bulk mineral exports until about 2015. Got an opportunity to jump over to Tidewater terminals and barge lines, and do business development here on the river system, which is where I kind of got some upriver experience, like the Portland to Lewiston piece. Did that for 6 or so years and loved it. And I just love the community and the diversity of what we do on this river system. I did a short stint on a terminal development down at the Port of Stockton, and then this opportunity opened up, and it's just a great fit. Just being able to be passionate and advocate for what I've been able to do and see operationally and with business development. How can we help? How can we help businesses? How can we help ports do it better and be successful? So it's an easy thing to be passionate about, especially since I grew up fishing on many of these rivers out. I point out the window because it's like a mile that way as a kid growing up. So it's just great to be back doing this.
Cool. I was going to ask another kind of softball question. What energizes you about your job, or what makes you excited about, I guess, the future? And I'm curious what you do outside of work that sort of refreshes you.
That's not a softball question, Frank. That's a hard question. Well, I work. I think it's easier to show up and go to work when you're passionate about what you're doing. And I truly believe the people in this industry and in this region are the best. And so it's fun to come to work when you're aligned with and I get to be involved in all of our 150 plus members. Sometimes that can be challenging, but most days it's amazing and it's fun because I get to go out there and see and do and learn different things. And that's what energizes me. It's not the same thing every day, sitting at a desk every day. As energizing as that is, we work hard here. And so to your point, what do I like to do in my free time? Like I said, I grew up fishing and being outdoors, so we love camping and paddle boarding. Lately, kind of started a little hobby during COVID of working on old cars. My son and wife and I restored my grandma's old 1968 Mustang. So there's something about just being in the garage and doing stuff with your hands and not thinking about having a screen in front of you and thinking about policy or advocacy outreach. Just thinking about how I can get this carburetor cleaned out, or why the heck my intake manifold is leaking. And then you can fix it and you can be like, yeah, I fixed it. And then there's another problem because it's a 60-year-old car. Keeps me busy.
Cool. Well, I look forward to being out there in your neck of the woods to see the waterway, but now I'm going to be excited to hopefully get to see the Mustang.
Do both.
Okay, good. That'd be great. Well, listen, thank you for making the time. I know you've had a lot of road time the last couple of days, or at least yesterday. So always great to catch up. Thank you for what you do and for being a part of the
Thanks so
interview.
much, Frank. Really appreciate the conversation. Thank you.